Good morning. Welcome to Inquisition Update. My name is Tom Fress. You're listening to Inquisition Update on LibertyRadioLive.com. It's my pleasure to be here with you again this morning. And thank you for taking the time of your busy schedule to join us for the broadcast. We're continuing our reading and discussion of this most important book, The Vatican Billions by Avro Manhattan. This book shows us how the Roman Catholic Church has become the financial colossus of the world, brought it to controlling power in the world. Many people believe the Roman Catholic Church is poor and has no great influence in the world, but the Bible tells us otherwise. And now this author is going to substantiate what the Bible tells us about the Roman Catholic Church, the visible facts on the ground of history. So far, we've covered the period of basically from the very establishment of the papacy up until the time of the Spanish-American Revolution, which was the topic of our discussion yesterday before the end of the broadcast. The uprising in the Roman Catholic states of Mexico and Central America, a period of overwhelming Catholic power and influence. They owned the land and they controlled the governments. The Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, became the de facto government of all these Central and South American republics. And, as is usual, the people were oppressed. The people suffer when the Roman Catholic Church is in control. And so there was a revolution, an explosion of revolutions. And backing up a couple paragraphs where we were yesterday, on the first, we'll begin the first full paragraph on page 119 of the book, if you're following along. Okay. There's a revolt taking place. It's anti-clerical. In other words, it's against the church. And it says these explosions eventually came not so potent as that which occurred in Mexico during the first decade of the 20th century. Most anti-clerical South American administrations came to power as a result of the popular reaction against the church's stranglehold on the life and wealth of the nation. The church was thoroughly disestablished. Her suffocating monopoly of education and politics was broken. Above all, her immense wealth was confiscated and redistributed among the land-hungry peasants. The Roman Catholic Church cried to heaven and accused the revolutionary forces of persecuting religion. Religion consisting in this case, as so often in the past, of the solid, concrete, and profitable ownership of more than 1/3 of all the wealth of Mexico. Typical of Roman Catholic history, she controlled 1/3 of all the wealth. And that's what we've already reviewed, why there was such momentum behind the Protestant Reformation, because of all the land that the Roman Catholic Church owned and controlled and deprived the nations of its wealth. Okay, power-hungry, money-hungry, materially hungry, land, gold, real estate, and now we're going to get into stocks, bonds, and other war-making industries as we continue in this book. But for right now, we're talking about the period of time at the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century, anti-clericalism and despoliation of the Roman Catholic Church's land holdings and other riches in Mexico. It says the church cried to heaven and accused the revolutionary forces of persecuting religion. Religion consisting in this case, as so often in the past, of the solid, concrete, and profitable ownership of more than 1/3 of all the wealth of Mexico. It says, for the Catholic Church conveniently soft-pedaled the fact that until then she had controlled more wealth than all the wealthiest Mexicans put together. And not only so, but directly or indirectly She controlled more estates and money than the Mexican government itself. Even worse, her manipulation of her wealth had become so detrimental to the already immensely poor Mexican peasants as to act as a veritable bar to any initiative, collective or individual, on the part of Mexican people. In other words, they were so oppressed that there was nothing to work for. There was no hope. There was no industry, no motivation or incentive among the Mexican people. The country was brought to a screeching halt. And it says, with the aid of her lay partners, the great landlords, she had, in fact, become the great paralyzer of the agricultural and commercial energies of the entire Mexican nation. And that, as we ended the broadcast yesterday, is the motivation still in Mexico. The people are oppressed, poor, desperately poor, and our government has opened up the border for them to come to this country because Rome is eventually going to Catholicize the United States, and the Mexicans are coming across the border seemingly for economic advantage, but Rome has other plans. And they will be useful in strengthening the power and influence in the Roman Catholic Church when the Roman Catholic Church decides to make America Catholic. Now, it continues, it says, the Roman Catholic Church reacted to the expropriation of her wealth with something more than mere lamentations. She engineered a most destructive civil war, which tore Mexico apart for several years, making the whole decade of the 1920s and 30s with uprising, mutinies, assassinations, and massacres. This is what happens when you divest the Roman Catholic Church of her property, her wealth, her gold, her influence, and her power. The Jesuits foment a civil war. It's punishment. And it says Catholic bishops, in this case, Catholic bishops, priests, monks, and even nuns took part. Witnessed the assassination of President Alvaro Obregón, July 17, 1928, by the Catholics sent by Mother Superior of a Mexican convent. Now we're going to get into this a little more as we go on, but he continues where we left off yesterday. It says, she went even further. The Roman Catholic Church went even further, seeking to engineer the intervention of Protestant USA. Okay, the Roman Catholic Church is going to try to use the United States to help stop the giant sucking sound of all the Roman Catholic Church's wealth from disappearing in Mexico. She's going to rely on Protestant USA, trying to get the United States involved in her behalf in Mexico. It says Catholics in the United States were duly mobilized and almost succeeded. The author says certain quote-unquote creatures of the Catholic Church demanded a preventive war against Mexico. There's the first time we've heard that word used here in this book, preventive war. We were talking about preventive war in the discussion of the book Vietnam, Why Did We Go by Avro Manhattan. And now we're hearing it here, the preventive war against Mexico. It says the call was not a rhodomontade, which means a boastful speech. In other words, the Vatican was serious. It had a most sinister significance. For behind it there was a second power, which the Mexican government had badly hurt. Certain giant corporations of the United States, which had recently penetrated very deeply into the economic life of the nation, many sectors of which they influenced and controlled almost at will. Now remember earlier we talked in this book that we were transitioning from an agrarian society to an industrial world, and that the Roman Catholic Church, in order to maintain her wealth and control in the world, had to change her thinking, had to know how to survive and thrive to a world-controlling power in this new industrial revolution, this new industrial age. And it says, when therefore Mexico, after hitting at the wealth of the church, took the next step and enforced a 1927 constitution by declaring that all the natural wealth of the subsoil was national property, the North American oil, copper, silver interest uttered a cry which reached heaven and Wall Street with the simultaneous echoes. Now, you don't suppose that these great corporations, American corporations, who were operating in Mexico, oil corporations, copper and silver interests, do you just suppose they might have been principally owned by the Roman Catholic Church? Listen as we continue. It says the great corporations, these United States corporations, which if they were exploiting Mexico, at least gave back some of the riches in royalties and revenues, became the natural allies of the Vatican. They became the natural allies of the Vatican. Rather, the two tacit partners until then now came out in the open, so that there was seen the curious spectacle of Holy Mother Church fighting for the interests of the United States corporations, while the latter, whose only and unique God was the sound, solid, silver dollar, began to fight for the spiritual values of true religion, that of Roman Catholicism. Interesting. United States corporations, an ally of the Roman Catholic Church. And that is literally going to define the rest of this book. That not only of the United States, but other corporations from around the world. The Roman Catholic Church is going to turn into a mega investor. Now, this unholy alliance brought the United States almost to the point of intervention. The great corporations planned to involve the United States in a war of intervention to defend their own present and future sources of wealth, just as the Roman Catholic Church wished to defend not only the spiritual riches of her children, but also her solid, concrete, and profitable riches here on earth. The two partners, the Roman Catholic Church and American corporations, left no stone unturned in their efforts to bring about a preventive war. Thus, while the Roman Catholic Church used the religious zeal of a Catholic to assassinate the President of Mexico, as already mentioned, the great United States corporations used political intrigues and monetary corruption on the most spectacular scale imaginable. One of their quote-unquote creatures, the main spokesman for preventive war against Mexico, was the Senator A.B. Fall, whose efforts were investigated by the American government, with the result that the super patriotic senator was officially convicted of accepting $100,000 bribe from American oil interests. He was dispatched to a penitentiary. More intrigue, and it says, notwithstanding the double pressure of the Vatican and the United States Catholic hierarchy and the interested corporations, which had managed to bring public opinion almost to boiling point, the United States had the good sense not to intervene. But how near the Catholic hierarchy and the oil corporations had been to their ultimate objective of involving the nations in an armed conflict can be gauged by the fact that definite military steps were taken by the United States Army. some contingents were put on alert and were ordered to be ready to cross the United States-Mexican border under the pretext of annual military maneuvers at the Mexican frontiers. The possibility of a military intervention had become so real that war correspondents were warned to be in the readiness. Their joint campaign for armed intervention to save their interests went on unabated until the first term of President Roosevelt. Roosevelt, putting first the interests of the United States and indeed of the whole Western Hemisphere, was not only repelled by the colossal self-motivation of the two parties, but more important still, he became convinced that the United States could not interfere in the internal affairs of Mexico without alarming the already suspicious Latin American countries, and still worse, without imperiling its good neighbor policy, a policy intended to diminish South American suspicions of the United States to help in the creation of a political and economic partnership between the North, Central, and South American nations. And I suggest that this is the genesis of what we know today as the North American Union. And it says, the Catholic Church's clever intriguing to plunge the two American countries into a savage war with the object of recovering her wealth in Mexico thus ended in failure, says this author. Yet from such failure there was initiated, or rather there came to the surface, an alliance, still very much in the making, between two seemingly inimical, or at least neutral forces, the Roman Catholic Church and the enterprising and vigorous American corporations. In the successive decades, such a partnership became so massively integrated as to influence the course of political, economic, and ideological character, not only of the United States and of the Western Hemisphere, but also of Europe, indeed, of the whole Western world. Rome's learning how to survive and thrive in this new industrialized world. And we're going to continue now in chapter 16, which is entitled The Catholic Church Welcomes the Rise of Bolshevism. Yes, listen, that ought to ring a bell instantly in the minds of those who know anything about history, and particularly about Bolshevism. Godless Bolshevism. Godless Bolshevism, according to as she has been defined by the Roman Catholic Church. But here is an alliance between the Catholic Church and the rise of Bolshevism. The unseemly partnership between the Catholic Church and the energetic commercial colossi of the United States during the Mexican despoliation, a phenomenon generated by their mutual determination to defend, preserve, and expand their interests, had not been merely a local alliance, but the reflection of a phenomenon of immense proportions, which had already occurred outside the Western Hemisphere, that is, in Europe. For there, out of the grandiose folly of European monarchies engaged with dreams of anachronistic grandeur, prompted by nationalistic jingoism and commercial greed, which had plunged that continent into the sanguinary First World War of 1914 to 1918, there had emerged the most infernal aberration seen for millennia: Bolshevism. This monster Bolshevism, which during most of the previous century had existed only within the confines of puny circles of impractical schemers and bohemian dreamers, had suddenly appeared in the devastation of Europe as a concrete, solid, terrifying colossus, seemingly without brains and without vision, determined to smash everything that belonged to the old order, to the old culture, to the old economy, and to the old religion. In other words, this is the great enemy of the Roman Catholic Church. Now it said, it had the strength of a primeval cyclops, but instead of one head proportionate to its size, it sported thousands of little ones, uncultured, all filled with odium and with numberless impossible schemes for a new society, a new man, and a new future. Its thousands of little brains were all reeling with the fumes of opiate-like hatred and drawn in every direction. Because of their incoherent anarchy, the giant threatened all and sundry with annihilation. Had this curse from the deep appeared in a small country, it would have been terrifying enough, but it identified itself with an immense one, Russia. And besides annihilating everything and everyone within its home frontiers, stretching from Japan to Poland, from the north to China, it threatened the whole of Europe with its pestilential red bacilli. Following an initial stupor, Europe, while attempting to rebuild upon its ruins, began to set up its defenses against Russian and international Bolshevism. Organized Christianity led the assault, for Bolshevism had defiantly declared itself atheistic. The smashing of religion was going to be one of its chief targets. That brought established Christianity, and let me just tell you, the most concerned was the Roman Catholic Church, and especially since in 1917 we had the Fatima apparition. One of the secrets of the Fatima apparition was that the popes were to consecrate the whole world, and particularly Russia, to the Sacred Heart of Mary, which is Mary speak for you must make Russia Roman Catholic. Now this is key to understanding what the Bolshevik Revolution was really all about. It was a religious war. Rome had competition in Russia, and that was the Greek Orthodox, or the Orthodox Church of Russia. Those who grew up out of the Eastern Europe and really were out from under the domain, the spiritual and temporal control of the Pope, and they had found refuge in Russia under the Tsars. They'd found sanctuary, and the Orthodox Church grew to be all-powerful in Russia. That the Roman Catholic Church saw as a tremendous threat. And all of this, the Marian apparitions and the Bolshevik Revolution, was simply a remedy to destroy the Orthodox Church of Russia. It's an incredible realization once you grasp it. Organized Christianity led the assault, for Bolshevism had defiantly declared itself atheistic. So now Rome is going to inject an atheist Bolshevik revolution in Russia to destroy one of her arch enemies, the Russian Orthodox Church. And we'll talk about it more when we get back from the break. We tell the rare truth, the truth that you won't hear anywhere else in the mainstream, the alternative, or other medias. This is the information that is avoided by commercial and even alternative media sources. This information is what makes sense of all history. The part played by the Roman Catholic Church in war and in peace, in the control of all the governments of the world, and we disclose on this program what that ultimate goal is. That is world control. A single man declaring himself to be the governor of the world by divine right. That is the papacy. That is the biblical Antichrist. That is what is prophesied in the Bible to come. And God's people need to hear about it, because you won't hear it anywhere else. So call your friends, call your neighbors, call anybody that'll listen. Tell them to tune in to Inquisition Update and hear the truth for once. Now, Avro Manhattan, in his book, The Vatican Billions, chapter 16, we're talking about the rise of Bolshevism, godless Bolshevism, and the secret benefit that godless Bolshevism provided for the Roman Catholic Church. And interesting, even before we continue the discussion, is anybody in my listeners who are regular, have you discovered so little, if anything, has been mentioned so far about the Jesuit order? Very, very telling that this author hasn't yet said a word about the Jesuit order. But let me tell you, the Jesuits are all about the development and the Bolshevik Revolution. Rome has a purpose for the Bolsheviks in Russia, and we're going to discover what that is right now. Organized Christianity led the assault, for Bolshevism had defiantly declared herself atheistic. Funny that the Roman Catholic Church would have connection with an atheistic regime. It has a purpose. Rome never does anything haphazardly. It says the smashing of religion was going to be one of its chief targets. That brought established Christianity, with all its vested interest and temporal wealth, swiftly on the side of all those other establishments which had everything to lose. Individuals, organizations, churches, parties, governments, and groups of nations united in a common front to destroy the Reds. And do you know what destroying the Reds means? That the Roman Catholic Church becomes all-powerful. That's what this is all about. To bring up this red menace, to threaten Christianity, so that the Roman Catholic Church can unite all of Christianity and put down her one competition in Russia, the Russian Orthodox Church. It's not about fighting communism, ladies and gentlemen. It's not about fighting Bolshevism. It's about destroying the Orthodox Church. Now, democracy proved a total failure in several victorious as well as defeated countries. The Catholic Church set up Catholic parties to dominate the democratic machines, but since these were unable to stem the red tide, she finally abandoned them and they were disbanded. Meanwhile, a violently energetic movement had appeared amid the general confusion. Fascism. Fascism, curiously enough, it came out of a Roman Catholic country, Italy. The first fascist dictatorship, in fact, ruled from Rome, next to the throne of St. Peter, the Vatican. Now, the Catholic Church was quick to see its potentialities, and she soon came to terms with it, for fascism had been set up to fight Bolshevism at home and abroad. Anybody see a Hegelian dialectic taking place here? Rome has created both fascism and Bolshevism. She's going to manage both sides of the conflict and form a synthesis. And what is the synthesis? The destruction of Orthodox Christianity, Orthodox Catholicism in Russia, and the strengthening of Rome's influence in Russia. This is in response, as I alluded to earlier, the Fatima apparition. Okay, it says fascism had been set up to fight Bolshevism at home and abroad. Anybody see the Jesuit hand in this? Do you remember the Jesuit oath? How that the Jesuits were to foment revolutions between two societies living together in peace, and then to operate on both sides of the conflict and manage the outcome and sit at the table of armistice. That's right in the Jesuit oath, and we're seeing this taking place right before our eyes here. Fascism on the one side, godless Bolshevism on the other side, and Russia is the battleground. Now it says, imitators follow suit. It said in Germany, the Nazi Party made its first moves in Catholic Bavaria. The Catholic Church blessed that as well. She blessed and supported anyone or anything that would stop Bolshevism. The big boogeyman, Bolshevism. It's kind of like Islam for us today. Okay? The big boogeyman for us is Islam. We've got to crush Islam. At all costs, we must destroy Islam. Of course, they don't call it Islam. That would be too, well, it wouldn't fit with our religious liberty tenets of our Constitution, so we call it the War on Terror. But trust me, it's a Holy Roman crusade against the Muslims. But now we're back during the Bolshevik revolutions, and the Bolshevik rebels are the big boogeyman that Rome is exciting all of Europe about. Now it says, all her religious and diplomatic exertions between the First and Second World Wars were inspired and promoted by such grand strategy. Her motives for so doing seemed logical. Bolshevism was preaching atheism, the total annihilation of organized Christianity. The Catholic Church had the right and the duty, now we're talking about the divine right and the divine duty, to fight back, to preserve herself as a religion, as a church, and above all, as a paramount entity of vested interest. Remember, the Roman Catholic Church regards itself as the one holy Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church, the one and only Church of Jesus Christ on the planet. And by that, she declares herself divine right to be the only religion. And now it says, for Bolshevism, besides wanting to destroy religion, that is, Catholicism, wanted to abolish property and to redistribute wealth. That means stripping the Roman Catholic Church of her landed masses and all control, remember? Now, the author says that meant that the Roman Catholic Church, in common with other churches, would have been divested of her riches if Bolshevism had conquered Europe. For notwithstanding all the sundry despoliations of the past, she still had a colossal amount of property throughout Europe and the Americas. Her partnership with fascism, therefore, when seen in this context, this light, was as natural as the alliance of the United States oil corporations and the Mexican venture. The fact that the Roman Catholic Church cared more for her earthly possessions than for her spiritual treasures was demonstrated by her behavior, or rather activities, vis-a-vis Bolshevism. These would seem almost unbelievable were they not concrete and well documented, since the truth of the matter is that she actually secretly welcomed the Bolshevik Revolution for reasons that I've already described. Now it says, this seems the most absurd contradiction. Okay, now I'm going to tell you, it would seem to be an absurd contradiction that the Roman Catholic Church would be interested in the rise of the Bolshevik Revolution, the godless Bolshevik Revolution. But let the author explain. This seems the most absurd contradiction in view of the Catholic Church's immediate, unequivocal, and stubborn condemnation and opposition to Red Russia during almost a half a century. Yet while her anti-Bolshevik exertions were genuine and effective, her secret activities in welcoming Bolshevism were no less real. Such double policies, conducted simultaneously at all levels during a period of years, were the result of the two most basic urges which have always bedeviled her conduct throughout her long existence: insatiable greed for ecclesiastical aggrandizement, in this case that means the destruction of the Orthodox Church in Russia, and the equally insatiable appetite for any prospect of potential earthly wealth. That's the temporal possession of Russia and all that she has. Remember the donation of Constantine and the pseudo-Isidorian decretals? In a word, it simply means the earth is mine and the fullness thereof. And now, during the Bolshevik Revolution, Russia is the target. Bolshevism was just the means to bring it about. Fascism was the other side of the dialectic to get it done. That's how Rome operates. I hope my listeners see the equivalent of this going on in the world today. Rome never changes her strategies. Now it says, with the fall of Tsarist Russia and the advent of atheistic Bolshevism, the Roman Catholic Church saw a vast panorama of such double conquest open before her eyes. The Bolsheviks, it must be remembered, true to their word, had annihilated, listen to this, had annihilated the Orthodox Church. That Russian Orthodox Church, having identified herself with the Russian czars, was second only to the crown in prestige, power, and possessions. In other words, the Orthodox Church had risen to so much power as to be comparable to the power that the Roman Catholic Church had elsewhere. So the Roman Catholic Church sees the Orthodox Church as a rival. Rome will not be challenged. Rome is going to put into practice in the world the fulfillment of the donation of Constantine and the pseudo-Isidorian decretals and the divine right to rule this world, and she's not going to let anyone rise to enough power to bring that conquest into question. And the target here is the Orthodox Church and Russia. And what my listeners have to realize, the Orthodox Church, as I've said before, was the product of the first great schism of the Roman Catholic Church. What was the second? It was the Protestant Reformation. The second great schism of the Roman Catholic Church. And watch what Rome does to destroy Orthodox Russia. And you will see in it exactly what she intends to do to Protestantism. And where does Protestantism reside in the world today? What remains of Protestantism is the United States of America. You understand now why the government of this country won't close the border with Russia or with Mexico? Stay tuned. That's what's going to happen. Rome's got an Inquisition plan for Protestant America, just like she's engaging in the discussion of this book in Russia. The target is Orthodox Catholicism. And it says the Russian Orthodox Church, having identified herself with the czars, was second only to the crown in prestige, power, and possessions. Her wealth was colossal. The parasitism of her clergy, incredible. In other words, the clergy of the Orthodox Church lived off the state and off the people. They operate the same way as the Roman Catholic Church does. After all, they're bed sisters. Okay? It's just a struggle for world domination. One has to overthrow the other. You can't have a two-headed church. All the power has to be vested in one man. And if the Roman Catholic Church, by the donation and the false decretals, is the divine right ruler, then Rome's got to destroy Orthodox Russia. Now, the overthrow of the Tsarist system, which was accomplished by this Bolshevik revolution, therefore brought with it the inevitable overthrow of the established Orthodox Church. And it says, to the Vatican, which had waged war against the Orthodox Church since the 11th century, the downfall of her millenarian rival was too good to be true. The evil Bolshevism could in this manner be accepted in view of its having destroyed the Orthodox Church, with one proviso, however, that it would give Rome a free hand to finish the task of eliminating orthodoxy in Russia once and for all. So this Bolshevik revolution is going to give Rome the upper hand in Russia. Fulfillment of the Marian Fatima prophecies. The consecration of Russia to the Sacred Heart of Mary. Now, the deal was accepted. And so it came to pass that while the Vatican was publicly fulminating against the Bolsheviks, she can't let the world know she's actually behind the Bolshevik Revolution, so she stands up publicly condemning the Bolshevik Revolution and rallying fascism to accomplish the task. She's got greater aims than just the destruction of the Orthodox Church, which is the primary goal. The deal was accepted, and so it came to pass that while the Vatican was publicly fulminating against Bolshevism, the Bolsheviks in the Kremlin and the Vatican's diplomats in Rome began secret negotiations. Now, didn't we see the same thing when we read the book, Vietnam, Why Did We Go? Rome wanted to create a beachhead for Catholicism in Southeast Asia. She chose South Vietnam and was secretly negotiating with North Vietnam not to prevent the flow of Catholics from North Vietnam to South Vietnam. That's what we learned in Avro Manhattan's book regarding the Vietnam War. Vietnam, why did we go? Now here you see, just as it said in the Jesuit oaths, Rome is working on both sides of the conflict. The deal was accepted, and so it came to pass that while the Vatican was publicly fulminating against the Bolshevism, the Bolsheviks in the Kremlin and the Vatican diplomats in Rome began secret negotiations. Lenin agreed with the Pope. Machineries were set up, papal commissions, some headed by American Roman Catholic prelates. Here's an involvement of the Roman Catholic Church in America, were dispatched to Bolshevik Russia, disguised as famine relief missions and the like. American Roman Catholic prelates were found in Russia, no doubt working for Rome, but they were disguised as Roman Catholic relief missions. Charities as a disguise. Now it says in Rome, elsewhere, Catholic priests were given accelerated instruction in Russian Orthodox theology and ritual. Well, why? Why in the world would the Roman Catholic Church, whose enemy is the Orthodox Church, why would she be training her priests in the Orthodox Church's teaching and ritual? Because they're going to infiltrate the Orthodox Church in Russia. It says grandiose schemes were blueprinted for taking over the Orthodox Church lock, stock, and barrel, including the claims for her former wealth and lands. Rome's going to take Russia. It says these to put forward at a later stage once Catholicism, Roman Catholicism, had taken over. However, Lenin first and his successors afterwards became aware of the extent of the Vatican's game. He grew difficult, and the Kremlin-Vatican secret honeymoon was abruptly cut off around about 1925. it had lasted almost since the beginning of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 and 18. Okay? So it appeared, at least to the world, that the romance between the government of Russia and the Vatican was broken off. But that's only because Rome had achieved her aim. Now, in 1922, Benito Mussolini became prime minister in Italy. The Vatican, who was still flirting with the Bolsheviks, cold-shouldered him. Indeed, she launched a new Catholic party to fight fascism. In 1925, however, after the Vatican Kremlin secret negotiations were cut off, the Vatican reoriented her policy and adopted fascism. She made a secret deal with Mussolini. The Pope would support fascism provided that Mussolini supported the Vatican and fought Bolshevism. Now, why would the Rome all of a sudden want to destroy Bolshevism? Well, look. If the Bolsheviks had succeeded in destroying the Orthodox Church, Rome wants to make Russia Catholic. And if Bolshevism is truly godless and atheistic, the Bolsheviks are now going to be an enemy of the papacy, aren't they? So here's the rise of fascism. The Pope would support fascism provided Mussolini supported the Vatican and fought Bolshevism. The following year, 1926, the leader of the Catholic Party was ordered by the Pope himself to disband his party. The Roman Catholic Party was called the Centrum Party, and they were called upon to disband and to join the fascists, the Nazi Party. And it says its former members were advised to support fascism. So that's when the Centrums, the Catholics, joined the Nazi Party. And it says in 1929, the Pope signed the Lateran Treaty and a Concordat with Mussolini. The Vatican fascism betrothal became a formal and official marriage. The Fascist Catholic Union was an event of the utmost importance for Europe and the West, for it created two precedents, or rather, it laid the foundations for two basic Catholic policies. The first of these was the one in which the Catholic Church identified herself with the two extreme political embodiments of Western right-wing conservatism, for example, fascism and Nazism, whose main objective became the containment and the ultimate destruction of Bolshevism, Russian or otherwise. And second, and the one in which the paramount interest to our present scrutiny was the signing of the Lateran Treaty. Very important. We'll talk about it tomorrow on the broadcast. Thanks for listening.